here. So thank you all very much for joining us, as I say, for this final session in our volunteer festival about shared interests, environmental systems and activities. We're joined by our colleagues Carolina and Franz from Shared Interests Environmental Committee. And so I will pass over to Franz, who's going to start us off. Thank you very much, Franz and Carolina.
Thank you very much, Sally. So I will just share my screen with you. Moment. So I hope that everyone can see this. Good, perfect. Right, so good afternoon and thank you for joining us today for a presentation about the environment awareness. We'll try to be brief because I'm sure you want to enjoy a little bit of the sunshine while it's still remaining in the UK. Like Sally mentioned, my name is Franz Villeneuve and I am the chair of the Shared Interests Environmental Team. And I'm joined by Carolina Jimenez, who will also from our Costa Rica office. So during this presentation, you will learn about the role of Shared Interests Environmental Team and how our latest carbon offset funds were used. We will also look at some action you can implement as an individual to reduce your carbon footprint, along with some environmental facts. And we will finish with a little quiz. So let's start. So the team constitutes of 5 members. There is 2 overseas representatives, Josephine Mowasu from our office in Kenya, Carolina Jimenez, as I mentioned, from our office in Costa Rica. We also have Mark Vasazzo, who is the data collector, myself as the chair, and also Tim Morgan, who is the representative for the senior management team. So the central role of the environmental team is to increase staff awareness of current environmental issues and promote staff engagement for waste minimization. So as such, we have a green policy in place which provide guidance to staff when purchasing goods or planning an event, along with supporting staff as well to recycle paper, plastic and glass, not only in the office, but also at home. The environmental team also monitors the business performance for social account and for the carbon offset fund. As you can see from this slide taken from our latest social account, the main contributors for our carbon emission are our UK operation, so mainly electricity and paper, but also for business travel. So this is from UK staff and also overseas staff. Due to the fact that the staff have been working from home since March 2020 and with the restricted travel, the offset figure as of September 2020 were much lower than normal, and the total was £206, which is, like I mentioned, lower from the previous year at £274 in 2019. So as the yearly carbon offset is relatively small, we started to roll over previous sum in order to have a more significant sum to fund a project. And as such, in August 2020, we completed a water management project in Nicaragua with the partnership of Shared Interest Foundation. The project supported 84 farmers from UCA de San Juan del Rio Coco, a producer of Shared Interests, who also partly funded this initiative. So the farmers learned how to manage the wastewater created by coffee production and their own households as well as impacting the health of the farmers. The wastewater was damaging the soil and disrupting the growth of their coffee. So in order to help them as well, we provide them with 65 water treatment filters on the farmer land to prevent the contamination of the soil and water source from wastewater. And sorry. So finally, the farmers were also supplied with 3,003 seedlings. So this is really important because once it's established, this tree will not only encourage the reforestation, increase soil fertility and reduce erosion, but will also provide an important shade to the coffee plant and therefore improving the quality of the coffee. So we've received an update from the beneficiary who've already reported improvement in their coffee farming. So over time, we also expect this change to lead to improved yield and increase household income from the sales of coffee. So the next slide, so this presentation was originally presented to staff on her day on April 22nd. And this slide shows 10 ways of how to make every day her day, and with small action that you can do. So I'm sorry if maybe the picture is not really clear, but we can share the presentation as well if you want after. But it highlights some few small action that you can do, such as spending more time outside, for example, or use a reusable bag, recycle, start gardening, or plant a tree. So you don't have to do all those changes at once, or not completely switch, as for example, one of the recommendations is to buy organic and food and product. So this obviously, as you know, organic food tends to be quite expensive, and if you're on a budget or a small family, this could be quite challenging. However, you can perhaps start by only purchasing maybe 1 or 2 products and add later on. It's the same for the meat consumption. They recommend there to stop eating meat. Obviously, you don't have to completely stop, but at least if you start reducing your consumption, you're already helping. And if you want to go even a step further, you can make a pledge as an individual for a specific action you want to change. So I encourage you to look at a website called wearedonation.com. So it will give you some idea as well on other action that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And it's quite easy. So you go on the website, you pick an action, you select the campaign, and you can record how you are doing, and then you report back. So, so it's quite interactive as well. So I do recommend if you want to do that. So now I will just share so before we start the quiz, I will just share some of the environmental facts, which hopefully will make you think about how, why it's important, to protect our environment. So the first fact is, for every ton of paper recycled, we save 33 trees. So this is quite important, just to see the importance of not only recycling paper, but also to trying to reduce the amount of paper that we are using. So every time that you want to print an email or any, or try to switch for perhaps paperless for your bills. So, it's understanding that those small change can have a big impact. Every liter of bottled water sold represents 3 liters of water use. And this doesn't say anything about the energy required to transport it. And once again, this is as if you buy a water, could you not have used a reusable bottle with you? There's now in the UK quite a lot of places where you can refill water. And I think part of, especially in Newcastle, for example, there is even the libraries and other places like that, and some small cafe who will have a sign outside to say that you can refill your water at this place. The other fact is 1 tree is able to supply a day's supply of oxygen for 4 people. So obviously this is, highlight the importance of trees. And if we can, encourage to plant trees, this is good for all of us. More than 8 million metric tons of plastic waste ends up in the ocean every year. That's the equivalent of dumping 1 garbage truck full of plastic into the ocean every minute. So it's just, just to put in perspective how much of waste that we are doing. And this is to for you to take into consideration when we are using some plastic, or do you really need this in the first place, and try to encourage you to have as the less possible garbage as possible. 12 minutes is the average working life of a plastic bag before it's thrown away. Globally, 1 million plastic bags are used per minute, and only 1% of them are recycled. So this again is to, as I mentioned earlier, is to encourage you to use a reusable bag instead of a normal plastic bag. Especially when you consider it only 12 minutes and the impact that it can have also on the wildlife. So it's important to try to reduce this as well. So the final fact is to create just 1 kilogram of consumer goods, manufacturer create 5 kilograms of waste. So this is really to for you to consider about, how you're purchasing is, before you buy an item, consider and ask yourself, do I really need this item? Can I do without it? To try to reduce this waste as much as possible. So now it's going to be the time to the quiz, and I'm going to pass it to Carolina. But just before, we're going to do the quiz a little bit different and a little bit interactive. You will see at the bottom of your screen, you have a reaction button. So if you just scroll down, so if you're using a laptop, you just go with your mouse and you will see the reaction button and you will see those 4 signs there. So Carolina is going to read the question and we just ask you then to select the appropriate icon for the answer. And then, so it's just, just to make you participate a little bit. So I hope everyone can understand that and that is clear. So here we go. I will now pass to my colleague, Carolina.
Thank you, friends, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to continue with the quiz that we prepared. So let's go. Let's start. Thank you, friends. Every year on April 22, Earth Day marks the anniversary of the birth of the global student movement called Fridays for Future, the birth of the modern environmental movement in 1970, the birth of the Zero Emissions Day. Okay, I have seen some different.
That means I don't know.
Okay, let's see the answer. And the answer in this case is the birth of the modern environmental movement. The second question is, global warming is caused only by human activity, only by natural factors, mainly by natural factors, or both by human and natural factors. Thank you to everyone. And the answer in this case is both by human and natural factors. I saw that most of you select the correct answer. Great. Okay, the third question is, which is the main source of excess greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? Deforestation, factory farming, human use of fossil fuels, or population growth? Okay, I see a lot of hearts selected. And let's see, the answer for this question is correct. Human use of fossil fuels. Deforestation is the second leading cause of global warming in the world. Is this true or false? Thank you, everybody. Most of you selected that said that it was true. Let's see what the answer is, friends. Correct. It is true. Global warming may influence the length of seasons, cause coastal flooding, lead to more frequent and severe storms, or all the above. Thank you. And the answer is all the above. Correct. What is the most common type of waste that litters our oceans? Cigarettes, food packaging, plastic bags, or glass bottles? What do you think of this one? Okay, plastic bags and food packaging. Let's see what the answer is. None of them. The answer is cigarettes. Incredible, right? Let's continue with the next question. What are the 3 R's of the environment? Reduce, remove, and recycle, reduce, rewash, and retain, or reduce, reuse, and recycle? Thank you. And the answer is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Excellent. Well done. How much of the Earth's land is covered by forests? 5%, 16%, or 31%? And the answer for this question is 31%. Food waste reduction is one of the most important things individuals can do to help reverse global warming. Is this true or it is false? And the answer is true. Correct. About how long does it take a styrofoam cup to decompose? 2 months, 10 years, 150 years, or 400 years? I'm seeing a lot of 400 and 150 years. And correct, the answer was 400 years. Most of you select the correct one. Recycling just 2 glass bottles saves enough energy to boil water for how many cups of tea? 1 cup of tea, 3 cups of tea, 5 cups, or 7 cups? Okay, let's see what is the answer, friends. 5 cups of tea. Yeah, this is an interesting fact. And thank you so much for participating in the quiz. I'm going to pass over to Franz again.
Thank you very much, Karina. So thank you. So that was the end of the session. So I hope that you enjoyed that and that you've learned some interesting facts. We allowed a bit of time for yourself if you ask some questions. So we are more than happy to take some questions. And I think Sally also is going to have a little announcement at the end that she wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Carolina. That was fantastic. And yes, as you say, hopefully people learnt a little bit from that. I have to say, having done that quiz when you did it with staff, I still didn't get all the answers right second time round. So definitely much more to learn from me as well. Ashley, I see you've got your hand raised there. Do you have a question?
Yes, a couple of points. The first is, rather sadly, I read in The Guardian last week that most recycling is now going to Turkey and being burnt. And I think we all need to try and engage with our local authorities to find out actually where the recycling is going. And we produce a frightening amount of recyclable stuff. And when you hear it might be going to Turkey to be burnt, it's pretty depressing. So I think we ought to try and follow that up. And the second point, I mean, some of us were on the 3 o'clock session about how wonderful Costa Rica was. But of course, I now feel that it's very difficult to actually justify doing long haul travel anymore. I mean, I regret to say in my past 67 years, I've done quite a lot of air travel, but I'm feeling now that I really must almost totally stop. So I'm very conflicted as I want to go to Costa Rica, but I don't want to fly to Costa Rica. So my question is there a ferry to Costa Rica? They're my two questions.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there is a ferry from Costa Rica, from the UK, but I'm going to investigate and do my homework and let you know if there is a way that you can come here. I don't know how long it will take, but maybe we can figure it out another way beside an airplane. So maybe we can walk, or I don't know. I'm going to figure out how we can do an environmental trip to Costa Rica.
How is the coffee transported?
The coffee is transported through the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, through the sea.
Sometimes cargo ships will accept passengers.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
Potential solution there, Ashley. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Catherine. Susan, you've got a question there.
Just a couple of things. Because all the tips were closed, I had to gather all the stuff here, and I was absolutely shocked at just how much plastic, and I try to avoid it. Vegetables and things are all bought locally from farm shops, so are never wrapped, but it is really, really difficult to avoid. And so many things are wrapped in stuff that you don't want, like biscuits and things, which used to be in just ordinary paper. So it is a really frustrating thing when you do try, and I do commend anyone who manages to find ways around a lot of these things. Just one particular question, I suppose, for the office, but also for people at home. And I'm interested, without any blame, but I'm interested to know how many people actually get toilet roll without plastic. I get boxes of it now which don't have any wrapping, from Cheeky Panda, I think it's called, and they are not wrapped at all, just one big box. And in the office, that's 3 people who...
I get another one, which, if you'll pardon the language, is called Who Gives a Crap?
But each one is wrapped, which I got fed up with.
It is wrapped, but it is wrapped at least in paper.
Yeah.
Which is either recyclable or is quite good for lining the food waste bin that goes in the compost.
Yeah, I swapped away from that because of that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And I think Vivian waved her hand as doing, yeah, thank you. But that's something I think we could all encourage any places that we go to, village halls, churches, meeting places, to see if they can think about doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. And I see that Margaret has just shared in the chat, that Suma have toilet rolls which have potato starch wrappers as well. So another alternative there for those of us seeking those plastic-free options potentially.
That's a real problem, because all these magazines we get, I've got dozens of them, but you can't put them in, very often you can't put them in your own garden composting unless it's a particularly good system, and some local authorities won't take them. So again, you know, it's a halfway mark in a sense, but I think that's useful thought.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Ashley, your hand's raised. Is that still raised from previously, or do you have another question?
No, it's not. It was me trying to vote on those options. So that's why I'm
Oh, I see. No problem. I can lower your hand for you. I'll do that now, so that if you do have another question, feel free to raise it.
That's real power, Sally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't wishing to use it without checking with you first. No problem. Stephen, you've got a question or a comment.
Yeah, it's commendable to hear what's being done with the carbon offset fund. But I'd like to know from France or Carolina, if we're talking of scaling up as we need to in terms of the challenges that exist on this environmental front, and the power of shared interest is really through its lending with so many cooperatives, many of them coffee ones, just like the one in Nicaragua that you mentioned that it benefited. How confident can we be as investors that the water filters you mentioned, the trees that assist in mixed farming and indeed in the coffee crop, and the education and training that were part of what you described are standard and regular items for coffee cooperatives and coffee growers across the board, amongst those fair trade certified groups that Shared Interest loans money to?
Great, thank you, Stephen, for your question. So this specific project, so in prior years, we, as the environmental team, we were looking for some project on our own, and we've realized it was a bit more challenging. So for that specific project, we used the expertise of our foundation, who have been working a little bit more with the recent years in those more projects with an environmental side. So obviously they are more expert than us, and they are able to provide those feedback with the organization as well. So for that point, this is something obviously that we feel that going forward, we will continue to work with the foundation to help us to identify some of new projects. We also were looking into, because as I mentioned earlier, because obviously the travel has been reducing, and I think going forward, that's probably something that Shared Interest we're going to be continuing to do, try to find ways to minimize our carbon footprint, which means that obviously this spot's still going to be quite small. So we are looking to potentially partnership with other fair trade organization FTOs in the UK as well, to see if we could have like on a larger scale, a little bit more impact as well. Because the previous project that we had, we did plant trees both in the UK and I think in Kenya. We also done some oven in Rwanda like years ago. So we want to have more, some project with a little bit more impact in the community, but also could like this one, help not only individual but also their coffee production. So it's on both sides. So I hope that he answered your questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, France. France, there's just been a quick question from Susan on the chat to remind us, please, where the project that the carbon offset was used was, which country it was in.
It was in Nicaragua. I'm sure, Sally, you will be able to share the presentation after. Yes. So, and Carolina actually, I think she's quite aware of that organization. So it's UCA San Jose del Rio de Coco, so in Nicaragua.
Yes, this is one of our customers from Nicaragua. And something that also I wanted to highlight is that right now that we don't have the option to travel and visit them, we are also doing virtual calls to follow up not only the lending management, but also how these projects that we are implemented, not only with this cooperative, with another cooperatives, because the foundation has also been working with us to find new allies in Nicaragua that can help us to follow up these projects, because we don't have the possibility to travel yet, and also because these allies can have expertise in training or more expertise in these filters that we install. So we are also securing that the investment that we do is not only done, but is done in a very in a good way, analyzing what the options are and what the best suppliers are, and what allies are in Nicaragua that can help us to bring this service. So that's how the process in general works when we are developing a project with the foundation and with the support only of the environmental team. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Carolina. Ian, I see you've got a question there, and then Susan. And for time, we'll take Ian's and then Susan's question. But if you do have questions beyond that, please let me know, and I can certainly pass those on to Franz and Carolina. And as Franz said, we'll certainly get hold of the presentation and share that with you. I'm sure you'll all want to use the quiz on your family and friends. So Ian, over to you for your question. Yeah, well,
it's a comment, actually, answering Stephen's question a bit. I think last week we were listening to a presentation on coffee in Rwanda, and they were doing similar tree planting and that sort of thing in Rwanda coffee plantations as well, to provide shade and to increase the tree cover. Yeah. It is working, I think, in other countries as well as Nicaragua. I think, Sally, that's right, is it? Yes, Ian, thank you. And yes, that was referring to the second of our member event series that we're holding at the moment, yes, with our the organisation in Rwanda that joined us then. Susan,
sorry, Sally. Can I just add something just to for that point? Actually, there has been at the moment a lot of organizations that are working more with the farmers to. As you know, there's a lot of monoculture because this was at the time trying to have increase the production, but more and more there's support from fair trade organization and buyers as well that are encouraging now producers to have this agroforestry. So we are slowly seeing some funding coming for having different species and going back to even some natural species that there was before in that region. So this is something that we see coming more and more. But as people are getting educated, hopefully we will also be able to support those projects as well. But training needs to be provided as well to the farmers. But this is something that we are aware of, and hopefully will be in the coming years to be able to encourage this type of project. Thank you, Sally. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Franz. Thank you for adding that. Susan, over to you for your question or comment, please. Thank you.
I think it was really an extension of both what Ian commented and then what Francis added, wondering how much this can be rolled out to other places, because clearly it looks very practical. And as Ian said, we've already got a hint of it. But also, as fair traders always relied very much on one of the aspects being the environmental impact, it would seem this really is the time to look at how we can encourage that. And that's followed on from something that was said in an earlier presentation today, but looking at some things in between, I was thinking, yes, there is just so much that we could be encouraging groups to do. and just wondered if you had any further thoughts on how that rollout is going to happen.
Sorry, yeah, so I think this is something that is still in the early days. We have to learn a little bit more about that. But there's certainly some of our customers who already encourage that. There is a French organization that we work with called Guayapi, who are, this is something the agroforestry is, and even they go even more into the forestry analog, or I can provide you the right terminology in English, but they're really trying to encourage the indigenous plants to go back, and so I think they work with two specific organizations, one in Brazil and one in Sri Lanka, where I think in Sri Lanka, for example, it used to be an old tea plantation, where now they've worked and created ecotourism to now that you can go and have a look of those original plants, and they try to make people discover the taste and the advantage of this type of agriculture. So I think this is something that we need also to encourage. But the fact, as you know as well, with COVID, there has been a good and a bad side. As you mentioned a bit earlier, Suzanne, a lot of, for example, my local Morrison was doing before COVID so many efforts to have no plastic, and so I was finally happy. But with COVID, they had to revert back to a lot of the plastic, so that was unfortunate for that. But I think it also made people realize that we might need to buy more local and seasonal. So I'm hoping that people are going back to that. And then try to encourage those small-scale farmers instead of having that, big consumption. So I'm hoping that there is good side of the pandemic, not just the bad. And hopefully this is something people will think about. And yes, and going forward, I've seen a better change.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Susan, for the question. I'm afraid, Ashley, for timing, we're going to draw things to a close, but if you do have any comments or questions, do send them through and we'll certainly pass those on. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you very much, Franz and Carolina, for a fantastic session, fantastic presentation. As Franz mentioned, just as she was making that final comment regarding encouraging the growth of indigenous trees, I just wanted to share with you all, hopefully something that you have all already received in your inboxes, but just to let those of you who haven't yet seen this know, we have this Volunteers Week. Obviously this festival falls within Volunteers Week. We have dedicated a group of trees in the National Forest to all of our volunteers this Volunteers Week as a thank you to you all for your commitment and your dedication to shared interest. You should all have received your certificate in your inbox earlier in the week, so if you didn't receive that, please check again and perhaps check your junk folders, although hopefully messages from us are getting through okay. And those will be planted in the next planting season at the National Forest, which takes place, the planting season runs from November to March. So we will get an update from the National Forest when those seedlings are planted. So we will let you know when that's happened and any further information that we get from the National Forest about those trees. So just to say a final thank you to Carolina and Franz for a fantastic session, and thank you to you all for joining us, and indeed to you all for your support as volunteers. And just a final thank you here from our friends Super Avo and Captain Coco. So thank you all very much, and thank you for joining our Volunteer Festival, and we'll be in touch with everybody. Take care.
Thank you.